What if you could see a market crash coming? I don't mean just a gut feeling. I mean, what if you had a mathematical formula? It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? Well, today we're going to break down a model that claims it can do exactly that. Okay, take a look at this. This chart claims that a formula spotted a bubble pattern forming in the gold market way back on April 26th. And get this, it projected the end of that bubble for May 13th, and it was startlingly accurate. So, was this just a lucky guess? Or is there something more going on here? Is it possible to find a ghost in the machine? All right, let's dive into this thing and figure out exactly what this formula is, and maybe more importantly, where it came from. So, the formula is called the log periodic power law. We'll just call it the LPPL model. Now, what's truly wild is where it came from. It wasn't created by economists on Wall Street. No, it was designed by physicists, people trying to understand how complex systems break, things like earthquakes or materials fracturing under stress. They realized that financial markets show eerily similar patterns right before they crack. Okay, so how does a physics formula decode the stock market? Let's break down the very specific patterns it's trained to look for. The model is basically hunting for a very specific fingerprint that a bubble leaves behind. First, it looks for prices that are accelerating faster and faster and faster until they're going almost vertical. At the exact same time, the little corrections, the pullbacks, those oscillations, they start getting smaller and happening more and more often. Imagine stretching a rubber band tighter and tighter. The vibrations get faster and smaller right before it snaps. That's the pattern. So just to be super clear, this is not a crystal ball. It's not magic. It's just incredibly advanced pattern recognition. The LPPL model is designed to see this specific fingerprint that, let's be honest, is almost impossible for the human eye to spot in real time with all the market noise. That all sounds great in theory, but here's the billion-dollar question. Does it actually hold up when you look back at some of history's biggest market bubbles? All right, let's put it to the test. We're going to look at one of the most infamous market meltdowns in recent memory, the dot-com bubble of the late 90s. So when researchers went back and applied the LPPL model to the dot-com bubble, well, guess what? The signature was there all along. You had that classic parabolic rise in tech stocks. The price chart was literally curving upwards, getting steeper every single day. You had the volatility squeezing as all those little oscillations got tighter. And then, almost as if on cue, came the massive crash in 2000. Okay, so we've seen the formula, and we've seen a huge real-world example where the pattern fits perfectly. But this brings us to the most important question of all. Why does this pattern even exist to begin with? And the answer has almost nothing to do with the numbers themselves. It's all about the people behind the numbers. See, markets are driven by human emotions, and it turns out that our collective behavior, especially when we're dealing with fear and greed, is surprisingly predictable. The LPPL formula is basically a mathematical model of crowd psychology. That accelerating price rise, that's just a picture of investor hurting and FOMO, the fear of missing out. And those tightening oscillations? Well, that's a sign of overconfidence, of this fragile belief that things can only go up. So while crashes always feel sudden and chaotic, the formula shows that the human behaviors driving them, they leave behind a clear mathematical trail. So understanding the pattern is one thing, but the real question is, how can you actually use this knowledge? You don't need to be a physicist to spot the basic warning signs. First, keep an eye out for a price chart that's starting to look like a hockey stick, just curving straight up. Second, notice if the corrections or the little dips are becoming smaller and shorter. And third, and this one is huge, pay attention to the vibe, the sentiment. Is everybody talking about it? Does it feel like this can't lose frenzy? Those three things together are a massive red flag. Ultimately, what a model like this gives us isn't a guarantee. It's not a sure thing, but it's something incredibly valuable. It's an early warning system. It's a tool that helps you cut through the emotional hype and just look at the structural health of a market. At the end of the day, it really leads to two different paths. On one side, you have the people who ignore these structural warnings, and they risk getting caught in the collapse. But on the other side, you have the people who learn to recognize the patterns. They're the ones who can protect their capital, or, for the really brave, maybe even find ways to profit from it all. The mathematical fingerprints of a bubble, they're not magic. They are simply the echoes of our own collective psychology reflected back at us in the market. The patterns will appear again and again. That's a given. So the only question left is, will you be paying attention next time?